What is going on, YouTube? So coming back with my next NBA mock draft, and I believe I've done 4 so far. Now, my post-lottery I'm not extraordinarily happy with. The post-lottery mock draft I did, which was, I believe, my version 4.0. I'm going to name this one like my version 4.5 because I said my last mock draft would be a full 2-round mock draft, and I'm not going to be doing that quite yet because I want to see what rumors play out over the next week or so, week and a half or so before I do my last mock draft and really have a final order and a final set of ideas for where players will go. So I will be doing the first 40 picks of this draft, 1 to 40, so moving into the first 10 picks in the second round as well. That's why I said it's like a 4.5 to give you guys an idea of what, you know, the players just on the bubble for like the first or second round might be. So I'm going to be posting the link or the results to this entire mock draft in the description below, as always. If you guys don't want to go through the entire video and you just want to see, you know, what mock draft I actually have going, comment what you think, where you think players will go. You know, possible trade scenarios, why you don't think a player fits with where I have them. But anyway, let's go ahead and start with the number 1 overall pick, and I got the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the power forward out of LSU, Ben Simmons. So I had Simmons going to the Lakers in my last mock draft. I had Brandon Ingram going number 1. And I do still think that Brandon Ingram will be the best player out of this draft. In my mind, he should be the number 1 pick. But it seems like Ben Simmons is going to be the guy going to the Sixers. It seems like the Sixers are pretty much set on that. Brandon Ingram does have a workout with the Sixers tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes, but his workout with the Lakers went extremely well, and it seems like that's where he's kind of destined to go. Ben Simmons, though, again, a guy that is, in a way, a generational talent. This is a guy that has the ability to facilitate, you know, outside of his long-range shooting. This is a guy that can play any position 1 to 5 or 1 to 4, maybe even 1 to 5. Post-up game needs to get a little bit stronger, but I think that'll come along once he comes in the NBA. This is a guy that has the ability to put up the same type of numbers as a LeBron James. A guy that can average, you know, 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists per game at a peak. So again, extremely hard to find, but again, he's got some other flaws that he'll need to you know, run through, but it seems like this is the Sixers guy. So number 2, I got the Los Angeles Lakers selecting the power forward / small forward out of Duke. That's Brandon Ingram. So the Lakers need to fit at small forward. This is a team that's going to need to be able to pick up another guy to be able to play alongside D'Angelo Russell, Jordan Clarkson, and Julius Randle. And Brandon Ingram seems like a good fit. If they can pick up a center in free agency, then, you know, this might be a dangerous team heading forward. Again, I like the fit of Brandon Ingram to the Lakers. It kind of fills that final hole that they have at the 3 spot or the 4 spot, regardless of how they want, or depending on how they want to do it. I think it's not talked about enough how Brandon Ingram could be extremely versatile in today's NBA. He's got the size and ability to play anywhere from the 2 to the 4 spot. He's a good outside shooter. He showed the ability to defend some power forwards in college. Again, he's going to have to put on some weight, but that's a common thing. And I think the Kevin Durant comparison is warranted. I think this is a guy that's extremely gifted offensively and actually might be a better, more developed player defensively. Actually is a lot more developed player defensively than Kevin Durant was at this point, getting drafted. So at number 3, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the power forward out of Croatia, Dragan Bender. Regardless of what Boston or Phoenix wants to do with the 3 or 4, I don't think Dragan Bender is going to make it out of the top 5. You know, the success of Kristaps Porzingis showed that a guy like this can be extremely successful early in his career in the NBA and can be extremely dangerous in today's NBA, having the ability to run the floor and stretch and be like a stretch 4 or a stretch 5 player. He's going to obviously at 7 foot 220, maybe even 7'1", he's going to have to put on a little bit more weight, get a little bit stronger so he can contend in the paint a little bit more. But this is a player that has one of the highest upsides of any player in this draft. Celtics need a big man. They need a big man that's a star down low. And, you know, they have some other first-round picks, so if they want to go ahead and pick up a big man that's NBA ready, they still have the ability to do that while getting maybe even a face to the franchise in the front court. So at number 4, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the small forward out of Cal, Jaylen Brown. It's no secret that the Suns need help at the 3 spot. They're either going to draft, in my mind, a big man like Dragan Bender, or even if they want to reach this high, maybe Henry Ellenson or Jakob Poeltl, or they need a guy that can fill in the 3 spot. And to me, the obvious answer is Jaylen Brown. He's the best small forward in this draft when you get outside of he's the 3rd best overall in my opinion, and then with pretty much the guaranteed 1-2 of Ben Simmons and Brandon Ingram, he's the obvious next one up. So at number 5, I got the Minnesota Timberwolves selecting the point guard / shooting guard out of Kentucky, Jamal Murray. So Murray's getting actually a lot of hype right now. I don't think this is a guy that's going to make it out of the top 5. I spoke into my, I wouldn't say contempt for Ricky Rubio, but just my thinking that they need another player in that backcourt to really just give the T-Wolves that final spark that they need. I've said it before. I think Zach LaVine and Ricky Rubio are good. I think they are good players, but if they wanted to find that final player to become a part of possible 3-headed monster between Wiggins, Towns, and if Jamal Murray becomes that guy, then I think that's that missing piece that they need. Either way, I think they need one more piece to that backcourt to be able to have a solid rotation in there, have a lot of depth, and make sure that this team moves forward the way that they're supposed to heading into the future. So at number 6, I got the New Orleans Pelicans selecting the shooting guard out of Oklahoma, Buddy Hield. Pelicans do need help at both spots in the backcourt. They honestly need help at almost every position except for power forward or center, wherever you plug in Anthony Davis. They've got a few solid options, but health has been a big problem for the Pelicans. Ryan Anderson stepped up big time, but there's no guarantee that's going to be a long-term thing that you can rely on. Drew Holiday's had a hard time staying healthy, not to mention Eric Gordon, Tyreek Evans. Guys that are inconsistent even when they're in the lineup and then just can't seem to stay healthy at all. So when you plug in Buddy Hield to an offense that really seems stagnant without Anthony Davis, then you throw in a guy that's polished, ready, be able to handle scoring in the NBA. I think this is one of the least risky picks. Obviously, he's older, maybe not as high a ceiling as a guy like Jamal Murray. But again, he still as ready to go as anyone in this draft, at least in my mind. And number 7, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the power forward out of Washington, Marquese Kris. Not much explanation for this. I think the Nuggets are going to look small forward first, and if Jaylen Brown's not there, then I think they're going to have to look for a guy that can play at the 3 or the 4 spot, or just maybe the next best player on the board. And again, Kris, one of the most athletic guys in this draft, I think would be a good fit in Denver. Number 8, I got the Sacramento Kings selecting the point guard out of Providence, Kris Dunn. Rajon Rondo out. They're going to need a guy. I don't think they're not only are they going to need a guy that just fills that point guard spot, they're going to need a guy that they can rely on for years to come. And again, Kris Dunn's the type of guy that might be able to be a face of the franchise sort of player. He's an extremely gifted player defensively. He's extremely gifted with athleticism and some of the better tools you need to be an NBA point guard. He's got good size for an NBA point guard at 6'4", 220. So at number 9, I got the Toronto Raptors selecting the center out of Marquette, Henry Ellenson. The Raptors, I have no idea what they're going to look like heading into next year. I think Norman Powell is going to play a big part in their future. One of the better second-round picks out of this previous draft. Obviously, a lot of it depends on where DeMar DeRozan goes. If he goes to LA, which I could see happening, I think LA would even be the favorite to land him right now. Then they're going to need someone to fill the 2 spot. But with the time being there, they need some help in the front court. Valanciunas actually played pretty solid in the playoffs this year while he was healthy. I'd say had his most productive year overall. Is still, in my mind, a starting quality center in the NBA. But they're going to need some help in the front court. Bismack Biyombo is most likely a free agent. And I think with obviously how good of a shooter Henry Ellenson is between mid-range and then down low, how fluid he is just as a runner for a big, I think he has a pretty high upside in the NBA. And I think some people recognize the mock draft, some don't. He's a guy that's disrespected by a lot of people, but a lot of people understand that he should probably be a top 10 pick. Again, I like him more than a lot of people do. I think he's got good potential in the NBA just because of how good of an offensive player I think he will be. But anyway, move on to my number 10 pick, and I got the Milwaukee Bucks selecting the center out of Utah, Jakob Poeltl. I think the Bucks need help with rebounding. It's one of their weak points. This is a team that can be good next year. This is a team with a lot of hype heading into this year. Has a bright future between guys like Khris Middleton, Greg Monroe, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Again, they need an anchor down low, a guy like Poeltl that can bring down some extra offensive boards and give what is a good shooting team and actually a pretty athletic team, more chances to put up points and be a little bit more solid on the defensive end of the floor. So at number 11, I got the Orlando Magic selecting the power forward out of Gonzaga, Domantas Sabonis. One of the most hardworking players in this draft, one of the best rebounders, maybe the best rebounder. I would give the Magic a little extra punch in the front court that I think they need alongside Vucevic. So at number 12, I got the Utah Jazz selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of Syracuse, Malachi Richardson. The Jazz have one of the better front courts in the NBA. There's no doubt about that, between Derek Favors and Rudy Gobert, which was an unlikely combination a couple years ago, but I guess even the year that Gobert was drafted, but he ended up being obviously one of the best centers in the NBA at this point, especially defensively, one of the better rebounders too. The Stifle Tower, one of the best blocking centers. They need help in the backcourt, and I think a guy like Richardson that could be versatile in the NBA between the 2 and the 3 spot. I think a guy that fits into a team that doesn't run too high a pace, but is a very fundamental sort of offense, and it seems like a very precise sort of team. For a guy that just has tremendous understanding of the game of basketball and just his footwork, his fundamentals seem like they're up to par, and it seems like the ones that will get worked out because he's only a freshman heading into the NBA. I like the fit. So at number 13, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the power forward out of Michigan State, Deyonta Davis. So again, one of the more unpolished players, but a guy that seems like he could have high upside as a defensive player and as a rebounder, and even to start developing a post game, and be a guy that can be a 12 and 10 player almost every night. And the Phoenix Suns, again, they're going to need help in the front court. Deyonta Davis, a guy that probably won't fit in at the 5, but could play at the 4, and just add some depth to a Suns team that is in drastic need of it. So at number 14, I got the Chicago Bulls selecting the shooting guard out of Florida State, Malik Beasley. In my mind, Chicago is just looking for a shooting guard. I think they're going to be taking the best player or the best shooting guard on the board when it comes around. And Malik Beasley seems like a tremendous fit in Chicago. If they do end up keeping Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler through the offseason, then adding a solid shooter, an athletic guy between those two that could help stretch the floor. And if he's not too greedy about getting his shots, then this is a guy that could make the Bulls just pretty much a tremendously efficient offense, at least in the backcourt. So at number 15, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the power forward out of North Carolina, Bryce Johnson. The Nuggets had the 15th and the 19th pick. I'm not going to explain this too much. I just think that they need to pick up a power forward, and regardless, I think they're going to get Bryce Johnson at one of those 2 picks. At number 16, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the point guard out of Washington, Dejounte Murray. So this is probably lower than a lot of people have Murray. He's athletic. He's a decent shooter, but he's a very good creator on offense. Seems like he could have high upside in the NBA. He's got good size, and the Celtics, I think, could use a little bit of size in their backcourt. Obviously a loaded backcourt, but one that doesn't have that much size. You're talking about a guy in Marcus Smart that's about 6'2". The point guard spot's not short, but it's definitely not tall. And then obviously Isaiah Thomas, a little bit vertically challenged there too. But in number 17, I got the Memphis Grizzlies selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of France, Timothe Luwawu. I like what Luwawu... Oh, crap. I forgot 15. Sorry. I had 15. I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the shooting guard, Furkan Korkmaz. Same pick as I believe I had him at 15 in the last draft, too. So, I'm not going to explain that one too much. But anyway, like I said, number 17, got the Memphis Grizzlies selecting Luwawu. I've had them selecting a good offensive player in the backcourt at every single mock draft I've done. I think it's obvious what their needs are. It's just offense, especially from the backcourt. With Mike Conley, in my mind, probably leaving, that just adds even more of a need for a staple in the backcourt. And, drafting an international player like Luwawu that Seems like he has a very high upside offensively, a player that plays extremely well above the rim. It's a little bit risky, but also this is a high risk, high reward type of player. So at number 18, I got the Detroit Pistons selecting power forward / center out of Kentucky, Skal Labissiere. I think that playing alongside a player like Drummond will be extremely beneficial for Labissiere. He gets to see, how it's done. Aside from free throw shooting, he gets to see how it's done at an NBA level for a player down low. If Drummond does go back to the Pistons, then I think that'll be a front court. As long as they don't go back to that same style they used to of, Josh Smith, Greg Monroe, and Andre Drummond. Those 2 years were extremely rough to watch for Detroit. Then I think they'll be fine. Number 19, I got the Denver Nuggets selecting the power forward out of... Oh, that's why I got screwed up. Yeah, and number 19, I got them selecting Bryce Johnson, so that's why I got screwed up there. All right, number 20, I got the Indiana Pacers selecting the power forward / center out of Kansas, Cheick Diallo. So, with Miles Turner now at the helm, and if they do end up keeping Jan Mahimi, this is a team that I think will need a solid third option in the front court. To me, Lavoy Allen's not a long-term option. I think that's an opinion that a lot of people would agree with. I think the Pacers are pretty much set in the backcourt. If they can pick up a guy like Mike Conley, or it's a long shot, but maybe like DeMar DeRozan this offseason, then they're more than set in the backcourt. George Hill is a guy that seems like, I don't know, he's not a starting point guard for a championship caliber team. And I'm not saying the Pacers are a champion. Hold on, let me get this up in the right spot. All right. I don't think the Pacers are a championship caliber team right now, but I think they're one of those teams that's one move away. The combination of Paul George, Miles Turner, and, just the depth in the backcourt. This is a team that can run like 4 or 5 deep if they do keep Ty Lawson in the backcourt. Between Rodney Stuckey, CJ Miles, Monte Ellis, and George Hill and Ty Lawson. I think I said one of those names twice, but anyway, this is a team that's one of those loaded front courts or loaded back courts depth-wise in all of basketball. They're going to need a little bit of help in the front court. Adding a guy like Cheick Diallo that's just shown so much promise, which he wasn't really able to show at Kansas. Adding a guy that can kind of fit that small ball style, especially running as fast as they will run with Nate McMillan now at the helm, then I think it'd be a really, really good fit. Number 21, I got the Atlanta Hawks selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of St. Joe's, and that is DeAndre Bembry. It's no secret that Atlanta needs help with the 2. DeAndre Bembry is just so athletic. Really showed what he could do in the latter half of the season, especially heading into the tournament. And I think he's a guy that really shouldn't make it outside the top 25. So at number 22, I got the Charlotte Hornets selecting the center out of Maryland, Diamond Stone. This one's just explanatory. They lose Al Jefferson. I think Diamond Stone's the most Al Jefferson-like player in this draft. Without really skipping a beat, they just get a younger version of him, a guy that is one of the most dangerous back-to-the-basket scorers in this draft. At number 23, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the center out of UNLV, Steven Zimmerman. This is going back to what I said earlier, which is finding a big man that they can bring in right now and can be NBA ready, that they can plug in and play on day one. Maybe not a starter, but maybe a 7th or 8th guy in the rotation. Zimmerman is an extremely reliable player in transition. He's a good rebounder. He's a guy that I think has potential as a back-to-the-basket scorer and can score pretty much drawing out anywhere to the free throw line and in. So at number 24, I got the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the power forward out of Australia, Thon Maker. Maybe the highest upside of any player in this draft. That's the thing right now. It's all upside. Yeah, if you draft Simmons and Thon Maker, then the front court's even more jam-packed than it was before this draft. I think this is a team that's going to end up unloading 1 or 2 of their players in the front court right now, whether it be Nerlens Noel, Jahlil Okafor, both of them. I think they want to hold on to Joel Embiid. Then, that opens up room for a guy like Thon Maker and then Ben Simmons, where if you want to run 3 players that are that tall, that's fine, because Thon Maker has the potential to be a 7'1" guy that can play at the 3 spot. That's the type of potential you're talking about with him. But at number 25, I got the Los Angeles Clippers selecting the shooting guard / point guard out of Vanderbilt, Wade Baldwin. The Clippers are probably going to select a shooting guard or I think they're going to either select a shooting guard, small forward, or power forward. I mean, I know that's like a 60% chance you're saying there anyway, but I think it's very, very, very little chance they select a center or a point guard in this draft. They need a little bit of help with depth at the shooting guard spot. Adding in a guy like Wade Baldwin that's just got tremendous tools athletically, obviously with that massive wingspan, and a guy that's shown promise as an outside shooter, would really add a pretty versatile dynamic to the Clippers that I think could help them out a lot. So at number 26, I got the Philadelphia 76ers selecting the shooting guard. Jesus Christ, I can't talk right now. Shooting guard out of Michigan State, Denzel Valentine. Guy that actually won the AP National Player of the Year, but I think has some faults in his game that are hard to overlook at an NBA level. But this is still a guy that can come in and start from day one. Is a tremendously gifted player offensively, decent shooter. He's got a good motor. The only problem is he's a huge defensive liability. But adding in a guy that can start in the backcourt from day one for the Sixers is something they probably will need tremendously if they're looking to make a push this year and finally stop tanking. So at number 27, I got the Toronto Raptors selecting the shooting guard out of Michigan, Kris LeVert. Again, this is assuming they lose DeMar DeRozan. They're going to need an insurance policy, someone that is a good shooter that could play a DeMar DeRozan-like role. And I think Kris LeVert, with his mid-range and long-range shooting ability, his just overall athletic tools, being a 6'7" shooting guard, being able to see over the defense like that, as long as he can stay healthy, I think this would be a really good fit. So number 28, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the center out of Vanderbilt, Damian Jones. So one of the more potential type players. He's a guy that's not very polished offensively, but it also isn't the greatest on the defensive end of the floor. But he's got the physical tools required to be a good center in the NBA. He's at 7 foot, about 245. He's strong. He's shown tremendous potential as a back to the basket scorer, and he's a guy that is kind of a specimen that's hard to find in this draft, especially going to be later in the first round. True center that can be a good anchor down low, especially on the offensive end of the floor, and can come in as a potential back to the basket scorer. So at number 29, I got the San Antonio Spurs selecting the power forward out of France, Gershon Yabusele. Again, a guy that's probably going to be gifted along the offensive end of the floor. Spurs need help in the front court very, very soon, just because the age of everyone in the front court right now. Obviously, Aldridge will probably be set for a few years, but Duncan's about done. David West is in definitely the latter half of his career. Days are numbered, and they're going to need another guy that can come in and be the next one up. And the draft and stash is kind of the trademark of the Spurs drafting in the later first round, and this year shouldn't be any different. So number 30 at the Golden State Warriors selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of Baylor, Taurean Prince. So this might seem like a weird fit when you first think about it. I think the biggest need heading into the offseason for the Warriors is going to be filling the hole that Harrison Barnes is most likely going to leave open. He's probably going to command almost max money, which I don't think he's really worth it, but I think some team will end up signing him to that. And then they're going to need a guy to kind of fill that role at the shooting guard / small forward spot. Taurean Prince, not as athletic as Harrison Barnes, but maybe maybe less of a turnover-prone player coming out of college. He's a more polished player than Barnes was, but not as high of upside. So at number 31, so moving into the second round, I got the Boston Celtics selecting the center, I believe, out of Bosnia. I'd have to go back and check. But anyway, Ivica Zubac. So a player, again, part of that kind of group of three centers I consider between first and second round picks, between Jokic, Ante Zizic, and Ivica Zubac. Three players that haven't had a whole lot of exposure, but also seem like they have a whole lot of upside. Zubac, a gifted rebounder, fluid, moves well in transition, and again, another guy that could come in to the Celtics front court and just be another solid option. So number 32, we have the Los Angeles Lakers selecting the point guard out of Kentucky, Tyler Ulis. This would add some depth, character to the Lakers that I think they're going to need. This is a team that will be extremely thin on the bench next year, and I think that's going to be a big pick for the Lakers to make sure they maximize it. Adding a guy like Ulis, again, adding heart, adding scoring ability, adding a facilitator to that second rotation that could really be a solid guy for 5-6 years for the Lakers rotation. So number 33, I get the Los Angeles Clippers selecting the power forward out of Providence, Ben Bentel, a guy that was kind of dwarfed by Kris Dunn's spotlight at Providence. Has shown what he can do in the recent months in the recent weeks, recent month, I guess, with the combine. Had a solid combine. He's got he's got pretty good tools athletically, and then also a pretty gifted scorer around the mid-range. He can also be a good rebounder, more physical player in the NBA. So, at number 34, I got the Phoenix Suns selecting the shooting guard / small forward out of Syracuse, Michael Benajay. Decent scorer when you're talking about mid-range and down low. Good slasher, athletic, works very hard. And I think will be a solid. I don't think there's any way he makes it into the first round, but also I think he's one of the safer picks in the early second round. So at number 35, we got the Boston Celtics selecting the point guard out of NC State, Cat Barber, a guy that I could see very easily moving into the first round. Didn't get a whole lot of exposure in college, but he's an aggressive player. He's smart. He can slash. He's a decent facilitator, and I think this is a guy that could come in and be on the bottom end of starters in the NBA for point guards, or one of the better rotation players. So at number 36, I got the Milwaukee Bucks selecting the point guard out of Oakland, Kay Felder. So again, another short player that just has tremendous touch. He's a good facilitator. He's a Tyler Ulis type of. He's kind of like him. They got different. Obviously, they got different qualities. Felder, a guy that is extremely dangerous if he gets into the paint. Even though he's short, he knows how to use his height to his advantage. He's got great touch when he gets down low, and he's a guy that's just really impressive when you watch his film, especially some of his combine film. So at number 37, I got the Houston Rockets selecting the point guard out of Notre Dame, Demetrius Jackson. Got, again, not the best physical tools when you're talking about height, but he is strong, he's athletic, he works hard, he's great on the defensive end of the floor, and I think he can be a decent facilitator for whatever team takes him as a rotation point guard. So at number 38, I got the Milwaukee Bucks selecting the center out of China, Zhou Qi. Again, just has loads of potential. Could be a great scorer could be a good scorer in the NBA, could be a decent rebounder. At 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan, obviously the physical tools are there, and for how big he is, he's actually pretty fluid. He's got decent hands. So a guy that definitely deserves to be picked up in the top 40. So at number 39, I got the New Orleans Pelicans selecting the center out of Croatia, Ante Zizic. Again, third center that I was mentioning earlier. He's good offensively, has high upside offensively, just needs to stay healthy. So at number 40, I got the New Orleans Pelicans at the last pick in my mock draft, selecting the shooting guard out of UNLV, Pat McCaw. So a guy, again, didn't get a whole lot of exposure in college, had a good combine, helped his stock out a little bit, a decent wing shooter, and I think a guy that might be a little bit slept on heading into the draft, but also could be a solid starter even in the NBA. He's a little bit of an unknown in this draft. So that pretty much does it for my mock draft version 4.5. Again, first one where I moved into the second round, and probably within the next week and a half, obviously before the NBA draft rolls around, I will have my full 2-round final mock draft version 5.0 posted. That's pretty much it. See ya.